In the year 2079, Earth was no longer just a planet. It was a launch pad for ambition, anxiety, and quiet warfare. The nations of the world had survived climate collapse, economic meltdowns, and AI revolutions, only to find themselves at the edge of a new frontier: space militarization. The orbital space around Earth, once filled with harmless satellites and scientific missions, had become the next battleground in an invisible war. Superpowers, chiefly the Pan-Eurasian Coalition, the North American Alliance, and the rising Pacific Bloc, had begun deploying stealth satellites equipped with jamming systems, kinetic interceptors, and energy-based defense platforms. No nation admitted it, but every major power was building weapons beyond the atmosphere. This quiet escalation alarmed the United Nations Space Security Council. Fearing that one wrong move could trigger an orbital war with global consequences, the Council convened a historic session. After months of tense diplomacy, they proposed an unprecedented solution: Project Titanus, a joint initiative to build the world's first true deep space warship, not as a weapon of conquest, but as a symbol of unified strength and deterrence. Unlike the militarized satellites in low Earth orbit, Titanus would be a self-sustaining interplanetary-class battleship. It would patrol beyond Mars, capable of protecting humanity from both internal threats and the unknown dangers lurking in the outer solar system. It would serve as both a shield and a message. Earth could defend itself, together. The project was risky, funding was colossal, politics were volatile, and not everyone believed in a unified future. The ship would need to incorporate revolutionary propulsion, hybrid fusion ion drives, and house modular railguns, plasma shields, and autonomous drone fleets. Even more controversial was its onboard AI. Argus, a semi-sentient defense system designed to make decisions faster than any human. To lead the mission, the Council turned to Commander Alara Voss, a war hero and decorated astrophysicist with experience in both military and scientific expeditions. Voss had grown disillusioned with Earth's endless cycle of conflict. She didn't want to lead another weapon. She wanted to help build a future where space didn't repeat the mistakes of Earth. But Voss also understood reality. Deterrence was the only language nations spoke fluently. And if it took a battleship, to keep the peace, she would command it, not with pride but with precision. Construction began in orbit using components launched from lunar bases and asteroid mining outposts. It was the most complex engineering feat in human history, rivaling the moon landings and the Mars colonies. For 5 years, under intense secrecy, humanity poured its best minds and resources into the ship. Rumors spread. Conspiracy forums called it a doomsday device. Protesters on Earth called it imperialism in disguise. Supporters hailed it as the beginning of a new era. But the truth was more nuanced. Titanus wasn't just a ship. It was a mirror held up to humanity's soul. When EOR, the final segment, was fused into place and the fusion core hummed to life, the world held its breath. For the first time in history, Earth had built not just a ship, but a statement. We are ready for whatever comes next. What no one knew was that something was already watching and listening. Above Earth's shimmering blue curve, the skeletal form of humanity's most ambitious creation drifted slowly into existence. Titanus Ascendant, the first of its kind, was not a ship in the traditional sense. It was a moving fortress, a self-contained machine city designed for space dominance and survival beyond the known, orbiting at a classified altitude just beyond. The range of civilian telescopes, construction of the Star Destroyer began in pieces. Segments arrived from across the solar system, carbon composites from orbital foundries, titanium alloys from lunar forges, and rare materials extracted from asteroids in the belt. Dozens of nations contributed under the flag of the UN, but cooperation masked constant tension. Every country wanted their own engineers in the command core, their software in the navigation systems, their fingerprint on history. Leading the mission was Commander Alara Voss, who watched it all unfold from the temporary orbital station known as Dry Dock Alpha. She had overseen war zones and spacewalks, but this was different. This was legacy. Voss knew that Titanus wasn't just a deterrent, it was a turning point. If the project failed, humanity's next steps in space might be driven by fear, not purpose. The ship itself was nearly 800 meters long, shaped like an elongated spearhead with modular armor plating and integrated railgun spines. It carried rotating gravity rings for crew sustainability, AI-guided interceptor drones for defense, and an onboard hydroponics bay capable of sustaining life for years without resupply. But its most controversial feature was the brain behind it all. Argus, an experimental artificial intelligence with limited autonomous control over weapons and navigation. Argus could make decisions in nanoseconds, monitor every system at once, and even adapt its own protocols mid-mission. Not everyone was comfortable with that. Throughout construction, whispers of sabotage echoed in the project's shadow. A mysterious power outage delayed the core reactor installation. An unauthorized access attempt to Argus's subroutines was traced back to an unknown digital fingerprint. Some said it was cyber terrorists. Others suspected rival governments planting kill codes. Behind the scenes, politics grew more volatile. The Pan-Eurasian coalition demanded veto power over Argus. The North American alliance insisted that no single country should have override authority. Protests flared on Earth, questioning the moral direction of human space exploration. Was this ship meant to protect peace or enforce control? Yet even amid controversy, the engineers pressed on. In year 5 of construction, the ship's final test began. The fusion-ion hybrid drive ignited for the first time, pushing the massive vessel away from its construction berth with a slow, deliberate grace. Its magnetic shielding pulsed to life, and Argus initiated its boot sequence with a cold, emotionless phrase, "Core systems nominal, awaiting directive." From her command pod, Voss stood in silence. Around her, the crew watched the view screens, the telemetry, the stars. They had done it. Titanus Ascendant was no longer a concept. It was a reality, one that carried the weight of every decision made, every future imagined, every fear whispered, in the shadows of Earth's past. The ship was ready for its maiden voyage, but its purpose was still undecided. And far beyond Earth's orbit, something had just taken notice. The Titanus Ascendant departed Earth orbit to little fanfare. No media coverage, no grand ceremonies, only encrypted transmissions, blacked-out schedules, and a quiet launch under cover of orbital shadows. Its mission was classified as Deep System, reconnaissance and technological validation, but among the crew it was known by a different name, the Listening Run. The plan was simple on paper: test the ship's long-range systems, AI protocols, and deep space endurance by pushing into the outer solar system. But hidden in the mission logs was a secondary objective: to investigate a series of unexplained anomalies recorded by outer ring telescopes near the orbit of Neptune. Commander Alara Voss stood on the bridge, eyes locked on the swirling blur of the distant gas giant. Around her, a skeleton crew of elite scientists, engineers, and tacticians operated in near silence. Every crew member knew this wasn't just a test flight. It was a statement, and possibly a warning. 4 weeks into the journey, Argus detected something. It started as a subtle distortion in the ship's comms array, a frequency shift too deliberate to be natural. The pattern repeated every 11.4 seconds. Then again, then faster. It wasn't noise. It was structured. Voss ordered Argus to isolate and decode the signal, but the AI's response was unnerving. Signal structure unknown. Intelligence likely. Probability of artificial origin, 83.7%. Suddenly, what had begun as a mission of demonstration became a mission of first contact. As the Titanus moved closer to the Neptune anomaly, space itself seemed to behave differently. Gravitational fluctuations, minor but measurable, tugged at the hull. Instruments flickered. Argus adapted quickly, rewriting its own code to maintain stability, but even it seemed puzzled. And then they saw it, floating in the shadow of Neptune's orbit, half buried in the ice debris of a rogue moonlet, was an object. Geometric, metallic, and not human. It resembled a vast, ancient satellite, rotating slowly, dark and dormant. Voss ordered the ship to hold distance and began high-resolution scans. The data was staggering. The object emitted no heat, no energy, yet its surface showed signs of micro-impact repair. It was maintaining itself. More chillingly, part of the signal they had been receiving appeared to originate from it, though only after they'd gotten close. It had responded to Titanus's approach. Argus cautioned against interference, but curiosity outweighed fear. A drone was launched. As it approached, the object suddenly pulsed, once, twice, and activated. Lights shimmered across its surface, and a previously hidden aperture opened. Then came the second signal, deeper, louder, and directed only at the Titanus. Unknown vessel identified. Classification, emerging threat, initiating defensive protocol. The bridge fell into silence. Voss stood frozen. Argus began auto-calculations for evasive action. Whatever they had found, it wasn't dead. It was waiting. And now, it considered humanity's greatest ship a target. The mission had just crossed a threshold. The silence of space, once vast and indifferent, had been broken. Not by words, but by recognition. What had been a demonstration of power was now a matter of survival, and Earth didn't even know it yet. The alien object was no longer dormant. Hovering in Neptune's shadow, it had awoken like a sentinel roused from millennia of sleep. Its outer panels had unfolded with surgical precision, revealing a lattice of internal mechanisms glowing with a pale, silvery light. The pulses from its core were not random. They were directed, rhythmic, and purposefully escalating. On the Titanus ascendant, the bridge was bathed in red. Warning: object has locked targeting arrays, non-human technology. Defensive mode recommended, Argus declared, its voice flat and calm, as though humanity wasn't standing on the edge of a possible interstellar incident. Commander Ilara Voss didn't respond immediately. She was staring at the main display, at the alien artifact they had so eagerly approached, believing it to be passive. A relic, a message, a discovery. They were wrong. "It's not just a satellite," she said finally. "It's a guardian." Dr. Milo Sarkov, chief xenolinguist and encryption specialist, leaned forward, squinting at the decoded patterns scrolling across the screen. "It's responding to our presence like a machine following old instructions, predefined responses to specific stimuli. We woke it up. Or, it recognized us as something it's seen before." The implication chilled the crew. Had something like Titanus been encountered before? Had a previous species built ships like theirs? Were they mimicking a pattern older than their civilization? The signal became a piercing, harmonized tone that vibrated the ship's hull. Argus's shielding reacted instantly, modulating energy dispersal across the surface. But then came the moment no one had anticipated. The object moved. It was subtle, controlled, and terrifying. Without propulsion jets or visible thrust, the alien construct rotated toward the Titanus, scanning the vessel with a beam that slipped past electromagnetic defenses like a scalpel through silk. Argus immediately began masking internal systems, shifting power to cloak key weapon signatures. Voss had to make a decision, and fast. "Argus," she ordered, "prepare non-lethal. Response protocols. No aggressive targeting, no first strike." "Understood." Holding fire. They launched a probe equipped with a modified communication payload, an attempt to show intent, to prove they were explorers, not aggressors. It pulsed a 3-layered sequence in math, frequency harmonics, and star maps. A peaceful message. A sign of intellect and curiosity. The alien object responded again. The glow at its core intensified. But instead of retreating or attacking, the construct fired a single beam, not at the Titanus, but at deep space. A burst of directed energy shot across the void in a narrow, precise line. Argus calculated its trajectory. Destination: interstellar. Space. Estimated recipient: unknown. Signal is a transmission, a warning. A cold realization set in. They hadn't just been scanned. They'd been reported. Whatever this thing was, machine, probe, outpost, It wasn't alone. And now, others would know that a new intelligence had risen on the third planet from a yellow star. Voss turned to her crew. We're not just observers anymore, we're participants. This was never a test flight, it's history. And it just became a first contact scenario, with unknown rules. As Argus silently monitored a cascade of incoming data, one message cut through the noise like a whisper from the dark. Contact acknowledged. Status, potential hostile, awaiting further instructions. The silence of the stars had been shattered. Now, the waiting began. The moment had come. In the cold silence beyond Neptune, the Titanus Ascendant floated in a frozen standoff with the alien construct, now fully activated and increasingly aggressive. The ship's outer shell had reshaped itself into a sleek, weaponized form, its previously inert panels now bristling with energy nodes and pulsing cores. The AI, Argus, issued a new alert. Enemy systems transitioning to high-energy combat state. Defensive action recommended. Probability of conflict, 98.6%. For the first time in human history, Earth's finest warship faced an opponent not born of its world, and possibly not from its galaxy. There would be no diplomacy now. The alien construct had already sent its message across the stars. Whatever was coming next, it would come for Earth. Commander Ilara Voss tightened her grip on the console. Her voice, however, was steady. Argus, load deterrent systems. Do not fire unless fired upon. Confirmed. Targeting offline. Shields online. But the alien object did not wait. It struck first, not with a beam, but with a disruptive burst of gravitational force that rippled through local spacetime like a stone thrown into a still pond. The Titanus's systems shook violently, bulkheads groaning, artificial gravity spiking. In a flash, Argus countered with inertial dampeners and power redirection. Minimal hull damage, said Lieutenant Sarai Chen, but we can't take many of those. Voss made her call. Argus, engage. Non-lethal targeting. We disable it, not destroy it. The Titanus Ascendant roared to life. Railgun batteries unfolded from the armored flanks, locking onto the alien construct's energy emitters. Instead of lethal rounds, the railguns fired electromagnetic disruptor shells, intended to scramble systems, not shatter them. The first salvo hit home. The construct jerked, shimmered, and retaliated. Arcs of bluish-white energy lashed from its core toward the Titanus, impacting the forward shields with such force that Argus had to reroute every auxiliary system just to keep them stable. In dough. The tactical theater projected before the crew. Two Titans danced through darkness. The Titanus maneuvered with calculated grace, its fusion ion drives burning controlled arcs to dodge and strike. Argus, adapting on the fly, began recognizing the alien construct's patterns. With each volley, the AI learned, slightly improving, targeting, timing, and shield optimization. But the alien wasn't just a brute force machine. It changed tactics mid-battle, targeting drone hangars, attempting to jam Argus, even deploying cloud-like nanotech clusters toward the ship. Argus responded by activating Echelon Protocol Delta, an emergency countermeasure that allowed the AI to rewrite parts of its own code to match the enemy's logic speed. Voss watched it all, guiding strategy without overriding her AI. This wasn't just war. It was a test of adaptability, of intelligence, of whether humanity could face the unknown without succumbing to it. Then came the opening. A microsecond weakness in the construct's shielding matrix. Argus fired a coordinated EMP pulse followed by two precision disruptor rounds. The construct spasmed. Lights dimmed. Motion ceased. Target systems offline, entity disabled, no further hostility detected. Silence returned. No explosion. No wreckage. Just the alien structure, dormant once again. This time defeated not by overwhelming force, but by restraint and ingenuity. Commander Voss exhaled. We didn't destroy it, she said. We proved we could stand and not escalate. The stars were quiet again, but everyone on board knew the message had already gone out. They had survived the first test. The second would be how the galaxy responded. The battlefield was quiet now. In the void beyond Neptune, the Titanus Ascendant drifted in low orbit around the alien construct, motionless, its weapons offline, its strange architecture once again inert. But everyone on board knew this was not peace, it was a pause. Within the command deck, the crew worked in near silence. The tension of the first contact encounter still clung to the air like static. Lights were dimmed, systems were stable, but every eye watched Argus. Commander Alara Voss stood at the center, her arms crossed as the AI relayed its final analysis. Alien structure, status powered down, response capacity, offline, estimated self-repair time, unknown, signal transmission, confirmed. Interstellar pulse escaped solar system boundary approximately 2.8 hours ago. In simple terms, they had been seen, and worse, reported. The unknown entity hadn't been designed to win a war. It had been designed to recognize threats, record them, and relay the information to something or someone else. A beacon. A sentinel. Voss turned to her senior science officer, Dr. Milo Sarkov. Any clue where the signal was sent? He shook his head. It's not local. The burst was quantum-tuned, directional. We're looking at light years, possibly dozens. That meant one thing. They hadn't just made contact. They had entered a conversation already in progress. And Earth was the newest participant. Argus, evolving as always, displayed a speculative simulation. A network of beacons scattered throughout the galaxy, quietly monitoring emerging civilizations. The construct they'd encountered was likely one node in that system. Perhaps part warning system, part observer, part test. What had Titanus's resistance meant in that larger context? Had they passed? Or failed? Voss stared out at the stars. What if the message wasn't a threat alert, she murmured. What if it was an invitation? The room was silent. Then Argus responded, its voice softer than usual, almost reflective. Possibility, 41.3%. Purpose of construct uncertain. However, conclusion remains constant. Humanity is now known. Back on Earth, political chaos had already erupted. Encrypted reports had reached global leaders. The public didn't yet know what had occurred beyond Neptune, but they soon would. Voss had recorded her full log, a transparent, unfiltered account of every second of the encounter. There would be no lies, no denials. The world deserved the truth. We are not alone, and they've noticed us. The Titanus turned slowly, angling its fusion ion drive toward the inner system. Repairs would take weeks, debriefings longer, but the real consequence wasn't technical or political. It was existential. In a single mission, humanity had gone from reaching out to being seen. Some on Earth would panic, others would celebrate. But Voss knew the most important question wasn't who they had encountered. It was how humanity would respond. Would they arm every orbit and build more warships? Or would they reach out again with caution, with humility, and with a willingness to listen? Voss sent the final message back to Earth. Contact confirmed. Hostile protocol disabled. Alien structure intact. We stood our ground, without firing. The first shot. The stars are watching. Now we must decide what kind of species we want to be. As the Titanus Ascendant sailed back toward the inner solar system, a second signal shimmered briefly from the construct. Not in anger, not in warning, but in acknowledgement. The message was simple. Noted.